America. My name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Thursday about this time. And today we're going to talk about survivorship bias. As people file in, I'm going to say a few words about Whoopi Goldberg, not much. I found out, and I think this is actually interesting, the woman who fired her is, who suspended her. Whoopi got slapped for saying that the Holocaust wasn't about race. And the woman who fired her, who suspended her, gave her time for reflection, is herself a sister and an HBCU grad. Right? So what does that mean? So this is the president of ABC who put Whoopi in timeout. She hotboxed her. Hotboxed Whoopi. So she is herself an HBCU grad. And, a black woman. And this actually makes sense because I was thinking, Whoopi's a big deal. I don't know. I thought she was taken out rather easily. Right? Like, Whoopi's a big enough deal that if you're going to go for her, I would think you would have, they would have to bring in a killer because she's not like some junior anything. She's like one of the most famous black people in the world. Well, in the United States, I don't know about the world, but she's one of the most famous and definitely the most recognizable black person in the world. So the idea that she could just kind of be put on timeout like a child, which it was, make no mistake, Whoopi was sent to the corner. And I did a whole show about that last week, so I'm not going to talk about that. I thought that happened rather easily. But I just assumed that it was some white lady who did it. But it turns out that it was a sister from FAMU. So we got to sit a little bit with what that means. That an HBCU grad, Kim Godwin, is the one who put baby in a corner. Right? So now, a lot of you guys will be surprised that that's the case. I won't be. HBCUs fired W.B. Du Bois. HBCUs fired Howard Zinn. HBCUs got their funding by Booker T. Washington saying, you let us educate the Negroes, you give us some money, we will create good overseers, and we will not ask for any sort of equality. We'll let you run things. And so that was the deal that was struck by Booker T. Washington and the whites. And so you have to understand, is Kim Godwin an anomaly or is she the product? Are the people are they out there trying to be Whoopi Goldberg or are they out there trying to be Kim Godwin? I think that they're out there trying to be Kim Godwin. And what that means is that HBCUs are in the overseer business. They are black overseer schools. And they put Negroes in their place. And I've told you before, if you watch this show, one of the best jobs there is for black people is, putting other black people in their place. I find that an unfortunate state of America and the job market. And if you support black people not having that job and having alternative means of income, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademics.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll keep doing what I do and encouraging you to do what you do because I'm what you call a free Negro, and I'm not sure that either Kim Godwin or Whoopi Goldberg are. So what that means, I'll just have to let you figure out on your own. But Whoopi is in the corner for 2 weeks, and Kim Godwin is the hatchet lady, the HBCU hatchet lady. Like, you have to ask yourself: I think the radicals who graduate HBCUs are the bugs, not the features of the system, and the system exists in order to produce more Kim Godwins, black people who will serve as overseers of other black people, and Kim Godwin does her job here. And these are just what I see, and I see what I see, and I says what I says. And which is important because Whoopi Goldberg, in an interview she gave on Colbert, says she's not going to talk about this stuff anymore because It just gets her in too much trouble, which means Whoopi Goldberg on Stephen Colbert admits that she's just not, she's muzzled. She's going to self-muzzle. What does that mean, people? What does that mean that Whoopi Goldberg and The View, the whole deal with The View is we're supposed to get out problematic views and kind of work it out. And Whoopi Goldberg is both right and wrong. I mean, she's wrong. She's mostly wrong, but she's wrong in a popular and productive way, such that like we should encourage her to get that view out there and figure out like, actually, no, if Hitler says you're a race that's troubling its race, the master race, then like you're the problem. Like you can't just say that you're not a race. They get to decide what race is, the people who have the guns. And so like you divorce liberal analysis. I mean, you divorce this like discussion of race from discussion of power, and you get things. You get stupid, you get unfortunate comments. And you get the idea, you get the notion that you get to decide every attribute about you. And you don't get to decide every attribute about you. When I'm running away from the Klan, I can't say like, well, you know, my dad's not African-American, or my kids are black. I call them black because they're my kids and they're black, and the mom's white. And you know, if someone's chasing after them, they can't say like, well, you know, my mom is white. It's just that my dad. No, they're black. So the people with the guns that get to decide what race you are, which is why, you know, I'm okay with black people getting guns. And two, we can't divorce. We can't divorce these kind of social constructions and historical constructions from the people who are in power in society and in history. You're right. Race is a social construction that the people in charge of society are like have the power to enforce, right? So, yeah. So Whoopi got slapped down by a sister, and I think that's a very important. What does it mean? So, does it make you feel better when a lady cop puts you in jail? Does it make you feel better when a lady judge, black lady judge? I want to get put in prison by a black lady judge. Is that going to make you feel better? Is that gonna make you feel just? If it's a black lady teacher who disciplines your son, and because I think Whoopi I don't think she should have been suspended. I don't think she should have apologized. But if you think what happened to Whoopi is bad, just imagine what happens in these schools. In these schools, that just like kind of wild out on punishing black especially black boys. So if you think Whoopi getting punished quick, as opposed to like Tucker Carlson or Bill O'Reilly or like any local Fox guy can say anything. Like Donald Trump can call whole countries shitholes. And he can do that. And we can almost have a productive conversation, because you know I actually think there could be a productive conversation about that. But he won't get put in timeout. Because that's what power means, right? You can speak your truth. Whoopi Goldberg, the most high-profile black woman we got, one of them, can't speak her truth. So what does that mean for us? If you want us to be free, then you need to see on my side of the argument, and you need more people, you know, saying what I'm saying. Because you know they tried to send one of these, you know, very educated, professional class black women after me when they were trying to get rid of me at UGA, and I'm here, and she's been moved on because when I put them down, they stay down. So like you just gotta understand that one, not all skin folk are kinfolk, and some people's whole job is to manage other black people, and that's not a job you want. That's not a job you want for your kids. That's not a job. That's not something that's good for your soul, but it's a good job in these United States. It's a well-paying job in these United States, managing, controlling other Negroes, and I think that's a problem. All right, so now we're going to talk about survivorship bias. Survivorship bias is the notion that whatever you're analyzing, the material that you're analyzing and building and kind of evaluating, has itself survived a selection process where you've selected some parts and overlooked others. Now, there's a book on this by a guy named David Lockwood. Maybe not David Lockwood. Lockwood. It's in the other room. It's called Survivorship Bias. You can find it on Amazon. Lockwood is the author's name. He's a business professor, so it's pretty readable. And he just talks about, like, he starts off talking about hedge funds, and I'll go back to that. But the funny part is when he talks about self-help advice. He's like books like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and all of that stuff. And what happens is that, like, sure, all these highly effective people have these habits, but there are all of these other people who also have these habits and are not living their best lives, would you believe? So maybe it's something else besides the habits. It's habits plus. And I want to know what that plus is. So he was like, you have survivorship bias insofar as, sure, all of these highly successful people have these habits, but there are all of these other people who have these habits and are just going to die early. And tired and confused about why they haven't arrived. And why they haven't arrived. So like a lot of people could have these successful habits and still not make it. and that's how you get confused. So you get confused about what advice to take, what not advice not to take. And if you're in black people, if you're on the other side of this, you know that like this becomes an issue because people are confused about their own like etiology or their own success. And there's a way in which you don't want to listen to particularly successful people because they might not be the most self-reflective about their situation. So there's that. Restaurants, another great example. Most restaurants go out of business, but you don't see most restaurants. You see the ones that are standing, right? So within 3 years, most restaurants go out of business all the time because like the margins are low. It's very hard. Franchise is a little bit better, but it's all just kind of a pain in the butt. But the ones you see have been around for 7 years or longer. And so you think, oh yeah, well, I might as well roll the dice and try to open up a restaurant. But, it's because you don't see the failures. Now, in some degraded towns, you see the failures because you see the shop doors still open. But for the most part, you don't see the failures. And so you don't understand like that most restaurants go down. There's no capitalism without capital. If you don't have capital and you try to open a restaurant, it's probably going to fail. I don't know what to tell you. But you don't see the failures, and so they're occluded from your judgment. Another thing, hedge funds. I'm going to explain to you hedge funds real quickly. All right, so hedge funds are managed accounts where they take your money and invest it, and it's supposed to beat the market. And say the hedge fund managers usually get a pretty good taste of the money, the profit they make. So if you give a hedge fund manager $100, the stock goes up to $120, they get $4. But then if it dips, they get nothing. They get nothing. They get absolutely nothing unless it goes back up over $120. Not just over $120. So you've set a high watermark that if the fund dips, it doesn't, nobody gets paid until it goes back over. So what the hedge fund managers do is they just close up shop and start a new hedge fund. They close up shop, pay out who they can with the money they can, and then start a new hedge fund with a new normal and do that same game. So when you look at hedge fund success that's beating the market, you don't see all of the hedge funds that have gone out of business, which is a lot of them, right? And all right, so there's medical studies are another one of these because medical studies journals are slow to produce negative results, like results that say that pills don't do anything. And the placebo effect is actually really real. So even if a pill doesn't do anything, if you're told it is and you take it, like it'll do work on you. So what happens is that we end up taking a lot of medication that's not actually doing things, especially antidepressants, and especially with moderate and mild depression, the pills won't help you. There's probably something else in your life. So we're over medicated, all these hormone treatments, all these things that, 20 studies will come out that say it worked, 25 studies will come out and say it won't, but we'll only publish 2 of the studies that says it won't, and we'll publish all 20 of the ones that says that it does. So you'll have just a distorted view if you're trying to make a judgment about whether these pills are good for you. Right? And it leads to over medication because a lot of the pills don't work, right? And I'm not just talking about the antidepressant stuff. It's just It's just a culture. But the placebo works. So what do we do with that? Right? So what does survivorship have to do with racial justice? All right, so we try to analyze systems with the pieces that are there, like understanding the laws that are there and the politicians that are there as they stand. We don't, and the arguments that are there. We don't do the arguments about the people who get, about the selection of the people who got cut out. Right? We don't actually think about why didn't this bill make it out of committee? And for example, in California, they just killed a Medicare for All vote. And they kill the vote because no one wants to be on record. It's a whole one-party Democratic state. They kill the vote because no one wants to be on record voting against it. So it just disappears. We don't have the conversation because the record disappears. Now we could debate the 3 or 4 other policies that are like private insurance policies, right? So that we debate and try to organize the functioning of the existing policies without figuring out like why better policies never made it. Right? Some cases make it to court. Other cases don't make it to court and always fine. Because like Rosa Parks wasn't even the first. She wasn't the first young woman who sat in front of the bus, right? But we talk about her because the other woman was selected out. And what does that mean? That you had to be the right kind of black to move the civil rights movement forward, or we thought you had to be the right kind of black. All right. So what does it mean? What does selection bias mean? In terms of how we think through even systemic aspects of racial justice. And when I say systemic aspects of racial justice, I say racial justice aspects that can't be reduced merely to some people's subjective feelings or even the objective laws on the books or the functioning of all the objective laws on the books. It's something else. It's the reason why certain laws aren't on the books. Why isn't there better labor policy? Like, instead of figuring out like how to organize within the labor policy we have to ask the question, why isn't there better labor policy? We need a federal job guarantee. We need more protection for unions. Why does that stuff get killed? Oh, because it would, empower black people. Because we work for a living. So what does it mean that certain policies, why aren't there more congressional debates? Nancy Pelosi won't sit for a debate. So she's selecting out who gets to talk to her and who gets to question her, and like opposing candidates don't get to do that. Only like media who knows that if they give her a hard time, Pelosi will cut them off. So our entire discourse, our democratic discourse, is vulnerable or liable or held hostage by survivor bias because we don't get to hear the candidates who don't make it past the selection process. We don't get to hear the issues that don't make it past the selection process. So we just have to kind of analyze the issues we do get. And that's the whole problem because all of the real stuff gets weeded out before it gets even like actually realized so that we can debate it and analyze it. This is why I need my own program. I need to be independent because except for breaking points, every now and then, Crystal and Saga do a good job. They had me on this week. I get invited and disinvited rather often. I get invited because people like hearing what I want to say. Then I get disinvited because they're terrified they start thinking about like what I might say. And I get disinvited rather often. But so if you want these ideas to survive, you need to go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And I will not only try to survive, I will try to thrive. But yeah, there should be... M. Smith said Pelosi's constituents allow it. No, they don't. They don't have a choice. She controls the media. She doesn't let anybody else get media attention. The constituents are held hostage. It's, if you don't know, Saddam Hussein, before he was elected, he won 99% of his vote. And before he was killed, he won 99% of his vote in Iraq. Won 99% of the vote. You could say the constituents supported Hussein. Or That's just what it is to be an authoritarian state. It was actually easier to get rid of Hussein than it is to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. The Republicans had a plan for Hussein. So what you have to understand is, what are the laws that don't get into place? Why don't they get into place? As opposed to just trying to understand the functioning of the laws that are into place, understand the real law is the one that the story is in the abortions. The story is in the laws that get killed in committee. The story is in the things you're not going to talk about. The story is in Whoopi Goldberg saying on Stephen Colbert after the incident that I'm just not going to talk about this anymore. I'm just not going to talk about these issues anymore. I'm going to go on and talk about fruitcake, whatever else they do on the View. Right? So what does that mean? That Whoopi's being silenced. That Whoopi's being silenced. Whoopi. A legit stand-up comedian, actress, who then hosted Oscars and then now just got smacked and put in the corner for 2 weeks. They put Whoopi in the corner. And you're trying to tell me black people are free. You're trying to tell me black people are free. So, survivorship bias. There's been a prior selection process where things that were selected out are overlooked, and we only deal with what happens to happen. But, one of my favorite examples of this is quarterbacks at University of Georgia. You can go to University of Georgia website and see the quarterbacks, and all the quarterbacks on the team is black. Team is black. The white people are quarterbacks, a tight end, and all your quarterbacks, and maybe a special teams guy, right? So the team is black, and it's the number one football team in the nation. You could say that, well, that means it's a racist institution. I'm like, well, UGA might be a racist institution, but not because of that. It's they could just say we took the best quarterbacks in the nation at the time. The question is, why is the best quarterbacks in the nation at the time black? Why is that? And so you have to go down to Pee Wee League where this happens. So in Pee Wee League, Pee Wee League's kind of about winning, but it's mostly about fun, and it's about the kids' esteem. So you just put kids in positions that the parents will like and the kids will like, and the little white kids see themselves as quarterbacks because that's what they see, and the parents want them to be quarterbacks because the parents want their kids to be whatever, and the black kids are just happy to play, and so. If you can equalize everyone's fun by just making white kids quarterback there. Then it gets a little bit older and the sport gets a little bit more brutal. And then white parents start pulling their kids out of football and start putting them in baseball or something else. And except for the quarterbacks, right? So white kids, if they could have played and would have excelled, they start getting pulled out to play safer sports. And instead of actually changing football, and having that conversation, we just said we'll just take the white kids out and we still get to have a game. That means we get the white quarterback, but we'll just have black people in all the punishing positions. In the punishing and punisher positions. So what does that mean? Then you go to, it gets more competitive in high school. Then you're like, well, I'm just looking for the quarterback with the most experience. And guess who's going to be the quarterback with the most experience? Right? It's going to be the white kid who started in Pee Wee League and now has specialized training and made it through the first calling because they didn't start out as defensive backs or safeties or any of the hitting positions, linebackers. So you're going to end up with your white quarterback with the most experience at quarterback and black people with the most experience at all the other positions. And that's if you want to win. And then it gets even more and more and more the case as you go up and it gets more competitive. So, and then, these are skilled positions, so it's not as if you can just switch over. You can, but it gets complicated at the higher level. So at no point in time were these logics racialized, yet they always selected for the white quarterback and against the white linebacker. Right? And so you have to think about, you can't just say, well, the NFL's racist, which is true, but that's not what's doing a lot of work. It's the material they get. And so when the NFL just picks the best quarterbacks for the different systems, they're going to end up picking mostly white guys who have experience in the system, like of a big, fast football team, right? So what does that mean? How do we work around that? Well, if you just try to go for outcomes, you're not going to get it because you don't understand the logic of the system. You have to figure out, why haven't we changed football so that white people feel comfortable playing all the positions? Like, that's a good question. Why aren't there more white linebackers? And why aren't? And so the question is, why aren't there more black quarterbacks? It's why aren't there more white linebackers and more white punishers? And what do they do instead? And what does that say about the black economy? That's we get our job punishing people and being punished. So that's there are questions, the systemic analysis that we can do, and not just try to just focus on outcomes, but focusing on like actually each of these selective barriers, pick some people and overlook others, and then produce material for the next barrier that for the next competition that just sees this material as given, right? They just see it as given. And it's working on a completely different logic, because the logic of Pee Wee is different than the logic of junior high football team, which is different than the logic of high school and college football, which is different than the logic of the NFL. Some people are playing for fun, and then some people are playing not to get hurt. Some people are playing for a little bit of prestige, and then some people are playing for money, right? So like these are all different logics selecting the material that's produced by the prior tier. So we have to see how race is operating at each tier, and maybe we should adjust the game so that race doesn't operate in this way. If people are not choosing football because there's no money in it, then maybe we should pay players. Like I'm talking like high school and college players. All right. So if that's so, especially college players, right? So if that's like, we need to look at why is it the case that at each level, some people are overlooked or getting either self-selected or selected out, and not just look at the people who arrive. And because the default is to look at the material as given and then kind of create from that, as opposed to do the analysis and think about what was the pre-processing that makes it the case that this is the material that's given. All right, so thank you for your time. The Survivorship book is by a guy named Lockwood. Go ahead and go to www.funkyacademics.com and help out. I'm trying to provide a service for the people, for the peephole. Take care, and I will see you next week.